So welcome back to another David Siddons Group podcast. This is Better Decisions, and I am your host, David Siddons. And I'm here today with a very close friend and a co-creator of an incredible software called Condo Geeks, Salil. Thank you for coming in to do this podcast to explain what this incredible tool is and why it's so relevant. Just for the audience, Salil, please introduce yourself, say who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for having me, David. I'm really excited because it's the perfect platform to talk about the story of Condo Geeks, right? So it all started because I was I bought an apartment in 2014 actually, in a pre-construction building. And then when I took possession of it, I thought, oh my God, what happened? The prices went down, like the typical kind of Miami fashion, right?
So actually, before you go into that, knowing your background, like knowing where you're from and what you did. I know you came into 2014 to buy a condo, but what is your kind of base and background and obviously how this obviously came about? I want to hear about how it came about, but just start with like...
yeah, absolutely.
That intro.
Great question. So... I have I'm actually a CPA, right, by profession, and I don't practice anymore, but I'm very analytics focused and always like to make my decisions with data, right? And I've started multiple companies. One company, we won the telecom space where we were doing a bunch of data analytics. Not only that, but we were connecting to all the big four carriers, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and we were servicing some of the MVNOs, mobile virtual network operators, and giving them a software to do all the business they had to do, signing up new customers, talking to the big carriers in terms of getting minutes, buying minutes in bulk and data in bulk from these big carriers, right, to servicing the customers.
So pretty high-end
software.
High-frequency software, very technical. So obviously...
And real-time, we were doing this real-time, so... We had to kind of monitor the usage in microseconds because otherwise it would lead to a lot of loss for our MVNO, right? Because there were plans for 250 minutes and we couldn't exceed 250 minutes, right? Okay. So we were doing this real-time analytics on minutes and data. So
and then you came into Miami. And back in 2014. So go into that story now. So you came in to buy a condo.
So I came into Miami. I just fell in love in Miami, like everyone does. Yeah. Especially when you're coming from the New York area. And I started looking at pre-construction and ended up buying a unit in Brickell, just based on the gut, didn't have any...
No data, no analytics.
And the agent that I was with was just selling, oh, that looks good. Look at the amenities here. Oh. And without seeing the actual building being built, I bought it based on the pamphlet or...
What building was that?
It was the bond on the Brickell.
Yeah.
And I was excited. I was super excited to, be in the building and spend some time there. But then once we got the possession, I already knew that the prices were down 10% from what I paid, right?
Oh.
And we had to pay like 50 to 60% down, right? So very bad investment.
This sounds like a very atypical story that I feel a lot of you watching this and you can relate to Salil's story who've come in, looked to buy pre-construction, got sold on a very glossy, sexy brochure and, the whole dog and pony show, as we call it, the pitch that they would have given you in the sales office and thought, this seems great. Bought it off gut without the analytics that we obviously now have. And then basically kind of got caught in the process as so many people did.
Absolutely.
So then what happened?
So bad. I was like, how did I do that? Why? I'm a data guy. Why would I do that? I just got bought by Miami, right?
So you kind of kicked yourself saying, hold on, I know data better than anyone. This is what I do for a living. Yeah. And I didn't, I take my own medicine.
Exactly. Absolutely. And then I was like, you know what? This market does have potential because it was growing and the weather is so good with the tax rates and everything. So I always thought that there was good potential in the Miami market. So I said, okay, let me just go buy one more. But this time, I don't want to make the same mistake that I made last time. So what I did is I told my agent, hey, can you download for me all the closed deals for condos, right, for the last like 7-8 years. And that's he did that. It took him like 5 to 6 hours to download everything because there's limits in terms of how many rows you can put on an Excel sheet at one point of time. Then you have to combine all the data, right? And then I actually pivoted all the data. It took me like 10 to 12 hours to like do this in Excel, right? Probably more, 20 hours or so. And so I could track, okay, how the market has behaved, right? At the building level, right? At the neighborhood level, at the bedroom level, right? And it didn't work that well.
So
but
you got some historical data together. At least you had something to work with.
At least something to work with. And then I bought another unit in another building in downtown, which actually worked out really well for me because this was data-driven decision. So I knew I was paying the lowest, one of the lowest, not the lowest, but on the lower side.
You got a better number. Yeah, because I remember that story when we met. You told me we met in a Starbucks in Brickell. I think it was the first meeting we had.
Absolutely.
and we actually go in. So that was 2016.
That was 2016.
16. Okay, 16, and then we met.
17 is when I closed. January 17. So
17. Yeah. And then we met in. I'm trying to remember when we met.
Probably like November 18.
Yeah, we met November. I think November 18.
Yeah.
And well, you tell the story because you were there.
So I ended up calling David. So I thought like there has to be a better way, like and other than doing this in Excel. And I thought there was a great potential for it. And David was a perfect candidate because I was looking online, and David was the only one in Miami who was doing this, analytics on the markets, on the buildings. And I thought, let me just call him, right? Mm-hmm. And I just, out of the blue, I called David. I think you were driving somewhere.
I was driving into Brickell, I think, randomly, and you said, look, can we meet and talk analytics? And as soon as you said the word analytics, I was like, I'm in. I want to have a conversation.
Yeah. And then we got going. Like we had the same mission. We wanted to achieve the same kind of end result where we give agents and buyers and sellers like a quick and like really quick analytics, right? Not something that takes like 20 hours to put together, but with
it was immediate data. Yeah, no, I remember the conversation well because I was frustrated. You were frustrated. We both talked about what we wanted to achieve, and we realized that we were both coming for the same thing from different directions. And so the thought was, maybe we shouldn't be trying to do this on our own. We should be doing this together. Absolutely. We're better together than we are apart. And our objectives were the same. And then we sat down and said, because my frustration had been that I always had data reports that I would run every 6 months. Every 6 months or every year, I'd do a big report and I'd have to troll the data. And our marketing director, Luce, who's absolutely awesome at this, I would give her these insurmountable tasks every single, 6 months to run data and put tables together and charts. And obviously markets move. And obviously we'll get into that later in the conversation of how fast they're moving right now. But we didn't have any there were no live systems. There was no live data feeds that allowed us to read the markets. So then we discussed that and said, maybe we should create one. So that was the first step.
Yeah, that was the first step. And we started with like a basic, I remember it was like a basic visualization software, right? Mm-hmm. And we started with a couple of graphs. Okay, David, let's just do one or two and see how it works, right? Mm-hmm. It took us some time to connect to the MLS data. Yeah. So we connected to the MLS data live, and we do track everything on a daily basis. We refresh data on a daily basis.
And that's not easy to do.
It's not easy to do. And not only that, some of the data in MLS is kind of crap, right?
There's no other way. Don't sugarcoat it. It is. There is the thing about data that any of you will appreciate is that you need firstly, you need a big enough data set to be able to make sense of something. That's why when we get into the luxury sector, it gets very difficult because you might have 2 or 3 sales in a month, and you get one extra sale or one less sale, and suddenly it's 35% or 35% down or up. So you need a big enough data set. But then there's some anomalies. There's like those outliers that you have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you are building the system, you were trawling the system to take out those outliers.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is like a needle in a haystack job.
Absolutely. So the address sometimes doesn't tend to be correct in some of the listings. So we look at the coordinates, right, and correct and map that address to a building, which it's all done automatically now, but took us a lot of time to do, right?
Yeah.
And then we do correct for the living area, because sometimes the living area is per the developer, sometimes it's not per anyone.
That's a really valid point. So just because as we get into this, we're going to get into the data, and you're going to appreciate the data is accurate. But to understand the data that we're putting out is accurate through this software, it's important to recognize that the MLS is an imperfect system. So when you go online and you're looking at even Zillow or Truly, and you're seeing the MLS, that there isn't enough policing, and there's a big issue. There's a big discontentment in our industry where people are inputting data incorrectly. Sometimes it's ignorance, and sometimes it's actually nefariously orchestrated that they want to pump up the numbers, and they'll put in the developer square footage rather than the architectural square footage. So there's a mismatch, and that's really important, because for accuracy's purpose, you've got to have apples to apples.
Absolutely. And we try to catch most of that, most of the anomalies, and correct them, right? So we have an algorithm that runs in the background where we're looking at similar lines and figuring out, okay, the similar lines, let's say a line in Bond 1201, 1200 square foot, right? It should be all 1200 square foot, right? Unless there's a reason that it's in like first to 10 floors where there's parking and those lines are bigger, right? So we do a fair amount of data cleanup in the background, which is why I think our data seems to be kind of better than some of the other
it is.
stuff.
It's accurate. I use it every day. And again, you go onto my website, play with this, and we're going to flash up as we go through this conversation on the screens, the software itself, so you can understand. Because this, even if you watch this podcast almost as a tutorial of how to use our software, it will be helpful for you. It will do the job. I mean, this is fun to give you the backstory, but there's a real world functionality to this, a real live system that you can go onto our website, and you won't get this anywhere else. Let's actually delve into the software. Let's go into it and discuss it, because why we built this is a lot to do with the problems that you have out there trying to buy real estate in the market today and understanding the big picture. So let's start off. We'll go through a few of the key indexes that we pull. And it's kind of like a Bloomberg. I think the easiest way to describe this system is it's like a Bloomberg terminal for real estate. And both of us actually scratched our heads at one point and said, how can a multi-trillion-dollar industry not have the same level of analytics that the stock market has? Why are we relying on, as you did, gut instinct to make a decision, spending millions of dollars without having clear line of sight? And that's why this now exists, and it is the closest thing to a Bloomberg system, because it gives you all the data points that you need in real time, and that's the key. It's a real-time software.
And also, we do a lot of customization, right, for our clients. So if someone is wanting to do a particular analysis, right, dig deep into a building, right, how things have happened in the last 15 years, we can do that, right? So that's the beauty of the software, that we can custom build kind of any screen that a real estate agent may have a need for, right? Other than whatever is there, which is fantastic. Right? So
it's about tuning it into because we recognize that unlike people who might buy, an index, or they might buy EFTs in the stock market, people buy one product. They're literally buying or selling one piece of real estate. They're not buying hundreds of pieces of real estate. So let's start off with like the macro or the wide camera angle lens on the software, and then obviously we'll kind of tune it down. The first thing that obviously you've got when we get into the closed data, the closed data screen is a particularly interesting and telling screen to start with, because it gives you a kind of an understanding of the economic cycle. So there's a dollar per square foot amount, and again, we'll flash up on the screen so you can see the dollar square foot amount changes as you go through. And the data goes all the way back to what, 2013?
2008.
2008,
Condos,
actually even further.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So, yeah, all
Five,
the way.
actually.
Is it 5?
5 or 6. Yeah,
That's getting better by it. Yeah, it goes back a long way. That's what you need to know. It goes back as far as you could possibly want it to go. And what it will do is you'll be able to see in every single neighborhood that dollar per square foot movement, that parabolic, curve that we get, that wave line that you see in all economic cycles. You can track when the start was, when the building was selling at inception, and it's MLS data, and then when it goes to the peak of the market, and then when it softens, and then obviously what it might be doing today. And we've got it by all the neighborhoods. We've covered all the neighborhoods in Miami. So you go to Brickell, Sunny Isles, Miami Beach, whatever you want. But it's one step further than that. Again, you've got the whole cycle, but within that screen, you've also got the list of all the buildings.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And we've got pretty much all the key buildings in there.
Yeah, probably 250 to 300 buildings in Miami, which probably covers most, if not all, good buildings, right? We want to track.
Yeah, so there's all the buildings. And then what I loved was that you're able to then take that filter where you can see the neighborhood performance.
Absolutely.
And above it, you can see the building performance.
And a bedroom performance.
And a bedroom performance. It actually goes even so further. So if you click on, and then this is a good for you to understand if you're looking at the screen, click on the building on the top screen where you can see the name of the building, and it will show you the economic performance, the dollar per square foot performance of that specific building.
Yes.
And you can group it, right?
Yeah,
you can group it to any building you want.
Yeah, you can add 2 or 3 buildings together.
Yeah.
If you want to look at 3 buildings together, you can do that, right? Or you can do at a neighborhood level, like you said. And then you can do at the bedroom level, and you can actually look at even by living foot, right?
Square, yeah. Let's say you want 3 bedrooms between 2,500 and 3,000 square feet, and you want to see it in buildings that were built post 2015, so the newer batch. And I want to look in Brickell, downtown, and Edgewater.
Yep.
And I think this is really relevant because when you look at a lot of reports, they tend to group stuff by neighborhood. But buyers today, and this is my observation, buyers today do not necessarily discriminate to one specific neighborhood. They might say, well, you know what? I just want to have a great beachfront experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Whether it's south of 5th or South Beach or Miami Beach or into Pearl Harbor or Sunny Isles. Show me the best of where the numbers are, because that'll help me figure out where things are. Where things
absolutely.
are going.
Like any buyer, like a lot of my friends have bought condos in Miami, and they're looking at. They might want to look at an urban neighborhood, right? So they're looking at downtown, Brickell, Edgewater. Like for them, it's all the same, right? They just want to get some good water views and be in an urban area. They don't want to limit themselves to a neighborhood, right? So that's what the software does really well too. They can look at kind of multiple neighborhoods together, how prices are behaved in those neighborhoods, how buildings prices are behaved in those neighborhoods, and the economic cycle is so important, right? Like when you look at the economic cycle, you know at what price point you're coming into the market, right? And that's what I did for my second unit. I wanted to be in the lower end of the cycle.
How did you use the software for your second unit? Take us through that.
So what I did was I looked at the closed data, right, for the building for the last, it was I think 2010 building. So I looked at the last like 7 or 8 years of data I had, and I was able to look at one economic cycle that happened in 10-11, right, where the prices really tanked. And I also saw the economic cycle before that, where the prices were pretty high, right? Like in 7.
Yeah, 7 up to 7, 6 and 7, super high. Obviously, the big crash happened in 8, affected 9, 10, came out of that.
Yeah.
And then 15,
16. Now, so I take that back. So I didn't, because this was a 2010 building. So I was able to look at the upside in 2014, 15 time frame. Yeah. So those units were trading at 750 to 800 in the peak, and at the bottom they were trading at 400 or 350, almost at 350. Yeah. So I was able to get in at 380 or 390 a foot. In that unit, so not the cheapest, but
Yeah, you got in that
end,
bottom,
right?
not even bottom
Yeah.
quartile, but
Yeah.
bottom 10%.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's because the cycles tend to be similar, right? Here, if you see the last few cycles.
Yeah,
it's
history
very
doesn't
similar.
repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes, as
It
the saying
rhymes.
goes. No,
Yeah.
for 100%.
Yeah.
100%. In fact, if you look, and I did this in 2015. This was before we met. I was running my own data sets, and I saw inventory growing across the markets. And I said, you know what? we are getting a huge injection of inventory coming in with new buildings. At the time, there was an introduction about, I think 8 to 10 new buildings were coming into the system, into the urban core system of Brickell, Downtown and Edgewater. And I said, we don't have enough people to absorb this. Mm-hmm. That is like thousands and thousands of product. We are heading for a correction. And at the time, the developers were selling like crazy, and they're like, it's great, it's amazing, everything keeps going up. You know, as I put in my second podcast, trees don't grow to the sky, but they're like, yes, they do, they'll keep going. And then, of course, I said, if you own a unit in the buildings in these areas right now, you want to get out because a correction is coming. And it sure as hell was. It did. You can go back and read this stuff in the reports I put out then. So you saw that, and the data shows that too. The great thing is, Condo Geeks data shows us that correction, and then again it shows us the growing inventory that occurred up to 2020.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is really relevant.
Absolutely, yeah. So we started seeing the uptick in market like right, I think I would say, and on the condo side, maybe Jan 2021 is when the market just started going up, right? But we saw the absorption, we saw the number of sales were going up. We saw the months of inventory was going down in the Condo Geeks software. Yeah. So that was a great sign, right?
Yeah.
If someone had if we had got a fund together, we would have made millions. Right?
Well, you know, it's funny because I've got clients at the time when I told them, and I got half a dozen clients I showed at the time in 2020. I got one guy who bought a unit in Oceania for like, it was like 3.9 he got it for, and his unit now is around 7. And I got another guy in at like 3.4, and his unit now is about 6.5. And I've got a whole list of clients that I got them in at the right moment. We use the software to analyze, and now they're absolutely like, I made out like a bandit. But the tools that we obviously have the dollar per square foot, because I want to get into current day, but before you do that, I wanted to highlight, you've got the dollar per square foot. You can see the percentage discounts that you're getting at the time, which is super relevant now, by the way, which you know. And then we also looked at the number of sales. And then obviously just recently, we've introduced, which you'll see when you see the software when you watch this video, there's new tools that we have where we're now tracking the months of inventory specifically and the pending deals.
Absolutely.
So, clearing my throat, let's move through to the last 18 months. Let's go into what we call the post-pandemic, or even during the pandemic situation of what happened in our market, which obviously is very important. And then we're going to get into where we are today and how we use our software today in July 2022, how to read the market. Okay, so getting into things as we go. You go through the software, look at the software, and notice this. In March 2020, it was announced, okay, we have a pandemic. We have this COVID virus phenomenon. And things were quiet for a few months because no one was doing everything. Everyone was in shutdown. And then in June, the engine fired up again, and everyone woke up and said, you know what, I want to move down to Miami and I want to live in Miami. And then the phones blew up. And if you look on tracking the software, you can see what happened. I mean, take us through what you saw on the screens as we went through this, as we were talking about this all the time.
Yeah. So, you know, I would have thought like when COVID happened, like the prices would go down like anyone else, right? All of us are the same thing. But then I started looking at the data, and it was quite interesting where we saw like the pending sales going up, right? The closed sales going up. And the prices also, like before that, there was a lot of discounting happening. Like the listings were getting discounted left and right? And we saw a stop to that, right? We saw that the listings were not getting discounted anymore, right?
Yeah, it went even so far the other direction in the last 12 months that it was over asking.
Yeah,
I mean, bids
absolutely.
over asking price.
Yeah, yeah. And we saw the months of inventory kind of going down, because I think a lot of the people didn't want to list at that point of time because they didn't know that this huge kind of upside was coming, right? And they were still stuck in the old, where they thought it's probably going to be hard to sell the condo, right? But just because of that, there was shortage in the market. People were coming in, and David can attest to that. There were people calling him all over.
Oh yeah,
New
I had
York,
like 5 or 6 calls
LA,
a day.
like
Nuts.
like all of these kind of locations, and because in Florida you could go out and about in COVID, right? If you were in New York and New Jersey or one of these areas, it is hard. That
was the kicker, because what happened was that, yes, exactly. As look, we've had conversations with New York and Miami, and obviously, your original property, you were actually living in New Jersey, in the the beautiful countryside of New Jersey, and then obviously now you've made the move down to South Florida. So now you're down here as well. You're one of the imports.
One of the points in the story.
Yeah, you're one of the points of the story. Exactly, a working case study. And so with the condo market, we had a bit of a slow effect. But then when everyone got their first shot, if you look at the amount of condo sales that happened through 21, it was
absolutely
record breaking.
Yeah, 21. I think Jan 2021 flipped.
Oh yeah,
that's what I like to call it, right?
Yeah.
And I was, I didn't see it, like we saw it coming based on the data, but it took us like some time to even digest it. Is this data correct?
Oh yeah,
like
did you question it because it was so extreme?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started kind of looking at the data to kind of make sure, is this correct, or is this like a system issue or a feed issue, right, from MLS? And then we realized, oh my God, look what's happening in the market, and it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah,
we consistently saw the months of inventory coming down. We, like David mentioned, the prices started going up. I bid on a unit, and I think it was March 2021. It was in Marquee, 2-bedroom corner unit. I think it listed for $585, and I bid like $575. Like I thought, you know what, $10,000 I should be able to get. There were like 7 bids.
No chance.
And no chance. Like people bid over, right? So I was like, okay.
And that's what happened, because when it became a really good deal, they all got swapped up. And then obviously the sellers realized, hey, I can get more for my unit. And so the prices started to get pushed up. And in fact, the prices went up. The condo market, and again, read our 2022 report, crash correction, continued growth. We're using a lot of the Condo Geeks software in that report. It feeds into it. So it's going to be relevant whether you're watching this in July or whether you're watching this in December. You're going to get a live feed for that moment. So it's going to be updated. But we pull that data in, and you could see the incredible change through the markets through that period. And as you track it, you can see the prices get bolstered up and up and up. And then as we move through, maybe we move to current day now, we obviously know what happened. Mm-hmm. We've got all that data, that report. We track from 15 to 20, 20 to 22, shows in the crash correction continued growth report. But then obviously this year, 2022, we've started to see some changing behaviors. And this gets really relevant because those sellers who were originally, prices were good, now they want top dollar.
Absolutely.
Prices went up 40%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the statistic.
Yeah.
55 for the housing market, 40% for the condo market.
Absolutely.
Which actually is good to mention, because outside of all doing the Condo Geeks software, we've also developed the housing software now as well, which is super important, because a lot of the mass migration has happened from single family, and that hasn't been easy data to get hold of until this point. So now we have that too.
Yeah.
But in the last 6 months, January was good. First quarter was good, I think, for 2022. But obviously in May, we had the interest rates announced, got hiked up. And then obviously stock market took a bit of a whack. Well, a bit of a whack is an understatement. Huge whack.
Yeah.
And now, as we're tracking stuff, and it is in real time, So what are we seeing now? I mean, take us through
Yeah.
the last kind of 60 days of what we're seeing now.
Yeah, I mean, so we've been tracking like the pending sales as one of the data points, and we see the pending sales as compared to the last month, like we are like 50% down, right? In terms of the closed sales, that data is still like 45 days old because of 60 days old, depending on how long it takes on average to close. But that's still kind of similar, and it's gone down a little bit, but it's kind of similar, right?
Yeah.
But the biggest data point for me right now is the pending sales.
Yeah.
The pending sales are going down, and the listings that are coming in, the active listings that are coming in the market are pretty consistent. So this sellers are still listing, right?
Yeah.
So that calls for, we're thinking about a correction at this point of time.
And to be clear, this is the Condo Geeks software. There is within the software you can choose what price point you want.
Yes,
and I think it's important to say that when we analyze, there are different price points and they behave very differently because it's a different demographic.
Yeah.
You got the ultra wealthy, the guys who are spending $10 million plus. You got the working wealthy category who are now kind of in that $5 million range. You got the entry level stuff at $1 million and under $1 million. They're not doing all the same thing.
Yeah.
Different crowds.
Absolutely. So we were just talking generally, but like David said, in our software you can track by price range, by neighborhood. You could look at Gables Estates, for example. That's probably not going to be that affected.
Yeah, right? And you're absolutely right. It's not, because certain areas have very low amounts of inventory. There's a very small amount of transactions that occur because there's just not that much available. But the inventory obviously shows that, and we've tracked that, and you cross-reference that with the tools to understand that you're dealing with. It's like with everything. I think that most reports like to water stuff down to the general baseline that can be applied to everybody. But the truth of the matter is that if you are making a decision, trying to make a better decision, which is what we do this for, this is the whole reason why this podcast exists, it's why the website exists, it's why the business exists. We're trying to help people make better decisions, which mean more accurate, specific decisions, not general information. Doesn't help anyone. It shows that we're seeing different sectors doing different things.
Absolutely. And this is something like which I don't believe, David, you've seen all the softwares out there, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing that kind of compares to what we've done, right? At a neighborhood level, at a building level, at going so granular.
It's not even close. I mean, there isn't anything in the world, as far as I know, and anybody watching this, I would propose you to challenge me and say, hey, no, there is a software that does it. No, as far as I'm aware, I'm not omnipotent, but as far as I'm aware, there isn't anything in the entire real estate residential market industry that allows you to track the analytics like this does, as precisely, as up to the minute. And you're able to manipulate it, because I kind of view it like, it's kind of like the Matrix. You're taking series of zeros and ones and huge amounts of information. Like you said originally when you first, going back to the start of the conversation, when you first got the analysis, it was like Excel spreadsheets of data. Reams and reams of data. Yeah. Who the hell is going to go through that?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'd converted all that numbers into a visual representation of the market that doesn't require you more than maybe 2 or 3 seconds to process it and go, I can see what's going on.
Absolutely. And for the agents like you, it's so helpful, right? You don't have the time. Like you're running around, like you showing buyers the product, you doing your own marketing, right? There's a lot of work on your shoulders.
There's a ton of stuff that we have to do. And I actually wanted to tell a story because this happened yesterday. So I get a client who sends me a message and says, I wanted to talk to you because I saw that you're very analytical and so am I. And I'm trying to make a decision about buying a building. And in this case, his focus was on new construction. And new construction data, if you guys watch this and you're looking at new construction, you're going to this will resonate with you. Whatever sales office you go into, in any building, new construction, they are not going to give you any more than the data that they have within that building.
Absolutely.
That's it.
And they'll pick the data that they want to show you, right?
Yeah, they will. And they'll tell you, well, there's only so many units left and this is the best building and this is, and because it's the best building, it's going to hold its value and go up. But what this allows you to do, what this data will allow you to do, and what it allowed me to do is explain to the client who called me yesterday to say, okay, so there are some buildings that you're interested in. Okay, I'm not going to get into how nice the bathroom is or how nice the views are or what marble they use, because that really doesn't matter. You can swap that out if you want to. What matters is the tangibles, what you can touch and feel. So we talked through the floor plans and we talked through the actual functionality of the building. And again, if you go into read the good articles to read, the best 5 existing condos in Miami and the best 5 new construction condos article that I've written in Miami. Both of them, I reference the data, the Condo Geeks data. Once you go in there, you're able to look exactly how that building stacks up in real time against the existing product. Because if you've got to wait 3 years for a building, there should be upside. And I explained to the client yesterday, look, if you're going to buy into one of these buildings and they're giving you, let's say, $2,300 a square foot, and all the buildings in the market right now are charging between $2,000 and $2,300 a square foot, you're going to lock up money and you're not going to be any better off than you would if you'd bought a resale product.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't make little sense. You've got to have upside. I mean, if I built you a house tomorrow, you're building a house right now.
Yes.
And I finished building my house. There has to be an upside.
There has to be an upside
to it rather than
putting something in pre-construction. There has to be an upside.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not the other way around that I experienced when I
as you
bought
did.
my first
Because you
condo.
get sold on, hey, this is glamorous and sexy and the market's going to keep going up. And they give you the general numbers. The great thing is you, by using this data, can walk in with us into the sales office and you have the general data of the market. You have the wide peripherals. But then you're able to get super granular and cherry pick, let's say, the best 5 buildings that you think are competitive against this product that you're buying and rank them and say, okay, so if I'm going to pay $2,300 a square foot, I can look at this building, this building, this building, this building, this building, and see where they are right now.
Absolutely.
See where they are in the economic cycle.
And see how they behave, right?
See how they behave. See how they've historically behaved.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be able to make a better decision. And you can do so at a very granular level. Like you said, I want 3 bedrooms, 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. That's the exact product that you might be looking at. So this allows you to not have anything general, super granular data, and make a better decision in terms of the number. And also get an understanding of whether the time is right now or whether you should wait.
Yes.
Because the inventory right now, as you see inventory grow within certain sectors, and you see pendings go down, and you see the discount of asking price to sales price, because this is another really useful data point, you can start to see your room for negotiation, or what should be your room for negotiation.
And also, like, it gives you the direction that the market might be heading in.
Yeah.
So all that data points can give you that insight, which you probably don't have. And most of the agents won't even tell you that, right? So
No, they won't. They won't. Especially the ones in-house won't, because they don't have access to the data, and B, they spend so much time focused on that one product that they're selling that they don't have those peripherals, and they can't really talk about, well, this building's doing this and this building's doing that. And the data that you get when you do buy pre-construction as well is also a little bit swayed, because the developers will not disclose what they sold units for. Yeah. They won't say, okay, we've been selling for a year now, and I sold the units for this number, because they don't want to cannibalize future sales.
Yes, absolutely.
And that data is protected all the way up until you get the CO and you get the closing, and it's recorded on the tax roll.
Yeah,
up until that point, it's almost like shadow numbers. You can't get them.
Yes.
So this now coming into this tool for Condo Geeks, the home software as well, which is also incredibly powerful to drill into the neighborhoods, is allowing us to see the inventory level changes, the dollar per square foot, where they are, the historic peaks. Because some buildings, historically, if I look at one building and I look at let's say a child of that family, there are developers who have built previous buildings. And I think it's helpful to look at the track record of developers and see what they've done before, and see the dollar per square foot performance of those buildings, and understand why maybe they did either extremely well or they didn't do well at all, and other buildings did better. It will help you recognize whether or not that future product may be better, the same, or worse than what's come before it. So one of the key data points, as we're sitting in what's relevant right now, and we're in July, of course, and we're thinking about what we want to pay attention to when we're looking at the software and what really helps us, aside from seeing the inventory change, seeing pendings go down, or pendings go up, or whatever the movement patterns that we're seeing within discounted from sales price, or active listings, or dollar per square foot, or months of inventory. There's something else.
Yeah, so it's actually what we've been trying to figure out is if buyers, you have an agent, buyer comes in and says, hey, you know what, can you find me a great deal right now, right? And it's kind of hard, right, to kind of find like needle in a haystack, right?
It's hard and it's exhausting because you've got thousands and thousands of properties.
Yes. So we've done an algorithm, right, on the back end, and we'll show you a screen too, where we kind of track some of the deals that are out there in the market. So we look at the historical prices, at what price point units have sold, a similar unit has sold in the building, and then we look at the active price for that unit now, and then we kind of compare the both and then classify it as a deal, right? And we actually show you a percentage, like, what percentage is it lower compared to some of the past sales the last 6 months or year. And we've been refining that quite a bit. Right now, there's not much in there, but I expect that within a few months
it'll grow.
It'll grow. Right?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. I mean, I always say to clients, if I don't have a deal for you right at that moment, I'm going to tell you, you know what? I'm going to put you on ice, not literally, but I'm going to professionally put you on ice. I'm not going to try and sell you whatever I've got at the moment because I don't think that's the approach. If you are a long-term player in the industry, and we've done this for nearly 15 years, you can get lucky by selling one or two deals. You can't get lucky by selling hundreds of deals all the time, every year on year, to get to this level. Mm-hmm. You can only do it by serving your clients better. And that means being honest with them, not just selling them what's in at that moment. So identifying deals when they come up and saying, you know what, there's going to be a moment I'm going to give you a call. So when that deal shows, and how fast does it show? Like the day it comes?
Like the day it comes. Like, so we refresh the data every morning. Mm-hmm. So let's say if something was listed last night at 5 o'clock, algorithms will run at night, and then in the morning you'll be able to see that. 8 a.m. in the morning, you should be able to see that.
So I'm going to put this into a working example. So let's say there's a unit that right now, let's say it was asking $2 million, and the best deal in that market was, over historically speaking, maybe $1,400 a square foot. And then for whatever reason, the seller says, you know what, I got to move this. And they drop the price. They drop the price to like $1,400 or $1,500. Mm-hmm. Will the system pick that up? Will it recognize it?
Absolutely. So we would look at the last 6 months of close price for that unit, for that type of unit, right? 2-bedroom, let's say, born on Brickell, right? Sells at, on average, has been selling at $750 a foot. This one is listed at $700 a foot. We'll flash it like the next day. Okay. And we'll show you the percentage that it is under as compared to the average price.
And that goes back, 6 months?
6 months. We can. So right now we're doing 6 months, but we can go with a 1 year horizon too. It really depends. So
he could customize it. So if a client comes, and again, this is useful to watch. If a customer comes to me and says, David, I want to know historically one of the best deals that maybe have happened even in 3 years or 4 years. Just throwing it out there as an outsider, the system can do that.
Absolutely. And then we'll show you what data point we're comparing that deal against. You can see the pictures of the units to kind of make sure how the finishes are. Yeah. Are the finishes comparable?
Super good point, people. If you're watching this and understanding, you recognize that no two properties are ever the same. And obviously, knowing this with finishes, dollar per square foot added, add-on, build-outs, all these things have a drastic effect on the true value of a piece of real estate. Absolutely. So it allows you to actually do apples-to-apples comparison.
Apples to apples, yeah. Perfect. It allows you to kind of hone into the deals, and then it gives you a platform to do your own due diligence, right? Yeah. In classifying it as a deal. And we are planning to roll a lot more units into it, so you can see any unit, any active listing, and how does it compare to the last year's, close price, right?
Which is so let's say
a client wants to, he likes a unit. Hey, this 2501. Again, I'll take the bond because it's on my mind.
Yeah.
Since we started off with that building, and he can kind of actually look at how that unit is priced compared to the last 1 year of sales or 6 months of sales.
Yeah. And I think, look, I think we know people that when we're dealing with clients at the level that we deal with at, they trust themselves better than they trust anyone else. I mean, I don't think you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I think that one of the beautiful things about this tool is that it doesn't require, I always say, you shouldn't have blind faith. Whenever you make a decision, you shouldn't be like, you know what, I've done this for 15 years, so just trust me. No, I don't think that carries water. I don't think that carries any weight. You have to be able to show the client that they can make a better decisions with the data and they can trust themselves. Because once they do that, they're far more willing to commit to anything.
Absolutely.
And clients say this to me all the time. Once I've got that right info and I know it and I see it and I'm making the decision myself, which is all powerful, then I'm going to go ahead. So as I always say, it's like when people go to Zillow, they get the numbers, which is all kind of based off general algorithms. You can go to Zillow and you can look at properties all day long. But if you want real verification, come to me. I'll give it to you. Based off real live data, not based off blind faith.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that point. That's really helpful.
Awesome.
I think this has covered a lot of it. I think that if you want more information, pick up the phone, give me a call. See, my information is always below and at the end. I encourage anyone, everyone, realtor, consumer, developer, to look at this software closely. If you want a one-on-one consultation for me to talk you through it, Zoom chat, take you through the screens, very happy to do so. I want to thank Salil, who has been a vision behind this. I know how long this has taken.
Yeah.
This is an ever-evolving passion, and I think it started as a passion.
Yes, and I really want to thank David. He's guided us along the way. We've been talking constantly. Hey, David, how about this data? Like this, how does this look?
Yeah.
Does this pending sales give more insight? And we've been kind of bouncing ideas along each other.
Because we want it for, it's really for, real world application.
Actually, we wanted to make sure that at the ground level, when people are working like David, right, he gets the relevant data points than us just making up stuff, right?
Yeah, because that doesn't help you. Don't make stuff up, guys.
Yeah.
It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't help anyone. Salil, thank you for coming in. Thank you for doing this. And thank you all for watching, because this really is Better Decisions. And we look forward to seeing you next time for another podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate that.